It started with a single message, a string of numbers, a set of coordinates, a whisper of a truth so dangerous that the last man who uncovered it never lived to tell the world. Adrian Calloway wasn't just rich, he was untouchable. A billionaire whose name alone could shake financial markets. He played the game better than anyone, until he discovered something he was never meant to see. Something that made the Federal Reserve afraid of him. Something that made him disappear. But before he vanished, he left behind a warning. A file. A piece of evidence too explosive to be buried forever. And now, for the first time, you're about to hear what he found. Like, share, subscribe. Because once you know the truth, there's no going back. Adrian Calloway had built an empire on numbers. He saw what others missed. Patterns. Trends. The invisible hands pulling the strings behind the world's wealth. He had predicted recessions, market crashes, government bailouts, always one step ahead. But even he wasn't ready for what landed in his inbox one cold February night. At first, it looked like a mistake. A classified financial report from the Federal Reserve, except something was missing. Billions of dollars, completely unaccounted for. He dug deeper. More missing funds. More buried transactions. Money vanishing into a system so tightly controlled that even the most powerful bankers never questioned it. Until now, Calloway's instincts screamed danger. He wasn't paranoid, but this wasn't paranoia. His phone line crackled with static. His security cameras glitched. Strangers watched him from cars that never left his street. Someone knew what he had found, and they wanted him silent. But Adrian Calloway didn't scare easily. He made a decision, a reckless one maybe, but it was the only way. He would go public. Not in whispers, not in secret meetings, but on the grandest stage possible. A live press conference. Every journalist, every financial analyst, every major news outlet watching as he exposed the lie that had kept the world blind for decades. March 14, 2025. The day the world would finally see the truth. But then, Adrian Calloway disappeared. No last words. No trace. No body. Just an empty penthouse. A laptop wiped clean. And a balcony where he was last seen, at 3:42 a.m. Surveillance footage showed him stepping outside, phone in hand. He looks up, as if hearing something. He says a single word. Then, static. When the feed returns, the balcony is empty. Adrian Calloway is gone. And the secret he was about to reveal vanished with him, or so they thought. Because hours later, in a dark corner of the internet, a single file appeared. The same file Calloway had tried to expose. Somebody else has it now. And this time, the truth won't disappear so easily. The world barely had time to process Adrian Calloway's disappearance before something even stranger happened. A file appeared. Not on the dark web. Not hidden behind layers of encryption. But out in the open. A nameless link, shared in an anonymous post on a small financial forum. The title? Calloway's Last Words. The post was deleted within minutes, but not before thousands saw it. And one of them? A man named Ethan Cross. Ethan wasn't a journalist. He wasn't a hacker. He wasn't even supposed to be part of this story. He was an independent financial analyst, a nobody in the grand scheme of Wall Street. But he had one thing in common with Adrian Calloway: he didn't trust the system. So when he saw the file, he clicked. And what he found inside changed everything. The document was massive, pages upon pages of financial records, transaction logs, internal emails. The deeper Ethan read, the more his stomach twisted. This wasn't just money laundering. It wasn't even fraud. It was systematic theft at a global scale. For over a decade, the Federal Reserve had been moving trillions off the books. Not disappearing into shell companies. Not hidden in offshore accounts. But funneled into something called Project 79. Ethan had never heard of it. Neither had Google. But Calloway had left notes, scribbled in the margins of the documents. Frantic, desperate messages as if he knew time was running out. They built a second economy. One we were never supposed to see. Ethan's hands were shaking. His pulse pounded. He needed to be careful. If Calloway was taken, whoever did it was still watching. He copied the file onto an encrypted drive, then deleted all traces from his computer. He needed to lay low, think, figure out his next move. But before he could close his laptop, his screen flickered, then went black. Then a single message appeared, white text on a dead screen. You have 24 hours to forget what you saw. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. His apartment was silent, but he felt it now, the invisible presence of something bigger than him. Watching, waiting. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He didn't answer. Then a knock at his door. A slow, heavy knock. He wasn't alone. Ethan grabbed the encrypted drive and bolted for the back exit. His heart pounded as he ran down the fire escape into the freezing city night. He didn't know where he was going. He just knew one thing. Adrian Calloway had been silenced. And now they were coming for him. Ethan Cross had no plan, no strategy, just adrenaline and a growing certainty that if he stopped running, he'd end up just like Adrian Calloway, gone. The knock at his door hadn't been a coincidence. Neither was the warning on his screen. Someone powerful knew that he had seen the files, and they weren't giving him time to think. He ran for 6 blocks, weaving through the late-night crowd, ignoring the burn in his lungs. When he was sure he wasn't being followed, he ducked into a 24-hour diner. It smelled of burnt coffee and cheap eggs, but right now it was the safest place in the world. He slid into a booth at the back, wiped the sweat from his brow, and pulled out his phone. No missed calls, no texts, nothing that could tell him who was hunting him. But he had one advantage, the file. Calloway had died trying to expose this secret. Ethan wasn't ready to do the same. Not yet. He needed to understand what he had before making his next move. He pulled out the encrypted drive, plugged it into his laptop, and reopened the files. Project 79. Billions of dollars, funneled out of the Federal Reserve's balance sheets, disguised as liquidity injections and market stabilization measures. But none of it made sense. The money wasn't appearing in private accounts or foreign banks. It wasn't even disappearing into military projects or classified government operations. It was just gone, like it had never existed in the first place. Ethan clicked on a subfolder labeled Restricted, for internal eyes only. Inside was a single document, a transcript. It was from a private Federal Reserve meeting held 6 months earlier. Topic: Project 79, Status Update. Participants: redacted, unknown. We have reached Phase 3. We need another 2.1 trillion before the fiscal year ends. Unknown. And Calloway? Unknown. We're handling it. He won't be a problem much longer. Ethan's stomach dropped. They had planned Adrian Calloway's disappearance months ago. This wasn't just about missing money. It was about control. A system so rigged that even the wealthiest, most powerful players had no idea what was really happening. Ethan swallowed hard. He had proof. Real proof. He could blow this wide open. But before he could think, his phone vibrated. A text message. Unknown number. Stop now. Last warning. Ethan's pulse hammered. His eyes darted to the diner's front windows. He hadn't been followed, had he? Then he noticed it. A black SUV, parked across the street. Tinted windows. Engine running. Watching. Waiting. Ethan didn't hesitate. He yanked the drive from his laptop, shoved it into his pocket, and stood up. The waitress barely had time to react before he threw a handful of bills onto the table and sprinted toward the back exit. He had only one option now. He needed to find someone who could expose this before he disappeared. 2. Ethan Cross had never felt hunted before. Now every shadow felt like a threat. Every glance from a stranger felt like a warning. The black SUV hadn't followed him. Not yet. But that didn't mean he was safe. He needed to act fast. There was only one person he could trust: Claire Monroe. A hard-hitting investigative journalist, Claire had spent years exposing financial corruption. She had sources in places Ethan didn't even know existed. If anyone could take down Project 79 before it swallowed him whole, it was her. But contacting her was dangerous. Phones could be tapped. Emails could be traced. He needed to get to her in person. Ethan moved through the city, staying off main roads, taking side streets, always watching his back. He reached a payphone in a rundown corner of downtown and dialed Claire's number from memory. She picked up on the second ring. "Claire, it's Ethan. No names. No questions. Meet me at Union Station in 20 minutes. This is life or death." Silence. Then, "You're scaring me." "Good. Be careful." Ethan hung up. He couldn't risk staying in one place too long. He walked to the station, blending into the crowd, heart pounding with every step. He had no idea that he was already too late. When Claire arrived, she looked tense. Dark coat, hair tucked under a hood, eyes scanning the station like she already knew this was a mistake. Ethan pulled her into a quiet corner. "I need you to listen. No interruptions." He handed her the drive. Adrian Calloway found something. The Federal Reserve has been moving trillions into a project that doesn't officially exist. He tried to go public, then he vanished. Now they're after me. Claire inserted the drive into her laptop. Her face tightened as she scrolled through the files. Then she paled. "Ethan, this isn't just about money." She turned the screen toward him. It was another transcript, buried deep in the files. A conversation between high-ranking Federal Reserve officials. Unknown. "The system is too fragile. If we don't move quickly, the collapse will be uncontrollable." Unknown. "So we reset it. Wipe the debt. Start over." Unknown. "And the people?" Unknown. "They won't have a choice." Ethan's blood ran cold. This wasn't just fraud. This was a global financial coup. Project 79 wasn't about hiding money. It was about erasing it. A controlled demolition of the entire economic system. Wiping debts, liquidating wealth, and consolidating everything into the hands of a few. When it was over, the Federal Reserve wouldn't just regulate money. They would own it. Claire shut her laptop, eyes sharp. "This is too big for one article. We need to go public everywhere." Ethan nodded. "Then we need to move. Now." But just as they turned to leave, a black-clad figure stepped in front of them. No badge. No words. Just a gun. The station was crowded, but nobody noticed. Nobody saw the cold warning in the man's eyes. "You shouldn't have come here," he said. Claire's breath hitched. Ethan clenched his fists. They had been found. The man with the gun didn't flinch. He didn't need to. His presence alone made it clear. Ethan and Claire weren't walking away from this. Ethan's mind raced. He couldn't die here. Not now. Not before the truth got out. Claire gripped the laptop tighter, her knuckles white. "If you kill us, this information still gets out," she said, her voice steadier than Ethan expected. "We're not the only ones who know." A lie, a desperate gamble. But it made the man hesitate, and that was all Ethan needed. With a sudden, violent shove, he knocked the gunman's arm aside just as the gun went off. A muffled shot. A bullet burying itself into the station wall. Screams erupted. Chaos. Ethan grabbed Claire's wrist and ran. They sprinted through the crowd, weaving between commuters as security guards rushed toward the noise. Ethan didn't stop, didn't look back, didn't care if the man was following. They burst out of the station and into the freezing night. Claire gasped, clutching her laptop. "We have to get off the grid. Now." Ethan nodded. He knew exactly where to go. 20 minutes later, they were holed up in a dingy motel on the outskirts of town. The blinds were drawn. The door was bolted. The air was thick with tension. Claire booted up her laptop. "We can't go to the media," she said. "Not the big outlets. They're compromised." Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "Then where?" She didn't answer, just started typing. A moment later, a live stream window opened. A nameless account. No location. No traceable metadata. Then Claire hit broadcast. The screen filled with Calloway's files. Pages upon pages of undeniable proof. And within seconds, thousands of people were watching. Ethan's pulse pounded. "This won't be enough," he muttered. "They'll try to shut it down." "They will," Claire agreed. "But by then it'll be too late. Because the viewers weren't just watching. They were downloading, copying, saving. spreading the files to every corner of the internet. The secret was out. Project 79 wasn't just a conspiracy theory anymore. It was real. Ethan exhaled. For the first time in days, a flicker of relief washed over him. Then Claire's phone vibrated. She glanced down, froze. A single text message. From Adrian Calloway's number. Run. Ethan's blood went cold. That's impossible. Claire shook her head. No, she turned the screen toward him, her voice barely above a whisper. It means he's still alive. The realization hit them both at once. Adrian Calloway had vanished. But he hadn't been silenced. And now, the most powerful people in the world had two loose ends to tie up. Sirens blared in the distance. Tires screeched. They had found them. Ethan didn't hesitate. He grabbed the laptop, shoved it into Claire's bag, and bolted for the fire escape. The chase wasn't over. It was just beginning.